quickly introduce myself and welcome you. My name is Karen Ranus. I'm the Executive Director for NAMI Central Texas, and you are here today for Mind Matters at Home. Pace yourself. We're going to be offering some tips for finishing the race to normalcy. And I'm so excited to get to welcome back Rachel Cypert, who has been with us before. We're going to be doing this conversation together. So welcome, Rachel. We're so glad to have you here and excited to have you join us. Before we get started with our actual sort of the meat of what we're going to be doing today, we thought it would be really interesting to try something different. So we hope that you guys will join us. We're actually going to be, for the first time, using this new site that gives us an opportunity to just check in with you guys and have a little bit of an engagement. So as you can see there, what we're going to invite you to do is either open up another browser or on your phone. I actually have it on my phone. You can go to menti.com. And then you can join us by, if you'll put in the code, so that's 1916 and then it's 0218. So if you enter in the code, then you can enter in a word. We want to hear from you. What words would you describe to talk about how you've been feeling this last year? And you can give us more than one word and we'll start to see those words pop up. And so join us in that. And let's see how we're all feeling. What are some of the words that you would use to describe how you've been feeling this last year? So anxious, overwhelmed, tired, scared. Definitely words that, depressed, lonely. No big surprises there, huh, Rachel?
Absolutely not. Yeah.
Let's see what I love the fact that as people are adding in words, and much like other word clouds, the words that are repeated more than once are the bigger words, right? So definitely seeing that tired, anxious, and overwhelmed being words that people are using quite a bit. Stunned, uncertain, numb. Lonely, yeah, lots of that. Oh, interesting. That numb word's getting a little bigger, as is lonely. Missing my people. Oh, I feel that. Uncertain, spiritual. Ah, interesting. Missing friends.
This is great. This is a great collection.
And I think, again, a great way for us to sort of kick this off is by being able to sort of name what some of those things are feeling. And again, we can see that tired, anxious, overwhelmed, isolated, numb, lonely, unsure are some of the bigger words. So we know they've been mentioned more than once. That's awesome. Christina, thanks so much for sharing that tool with us, because I think what a great way to sort of set the foundation for the topic that we're going to be talking about today. So let me share my screen now and we'll get started. Are you seeing the right screen? You seen that first? Okay, awesome. Just wanted to make sure I had that up right. Okay. Yeah, so let's get started then.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me, Karen. So Karen and I talked about this topic because I saw so many clients coming in with like a similar, there was a pattern that was developing, and the pattern that has developed is after the new year and then approaching the anniversary to the pandemic starting, clients were sort of like, okay, we've been dealing with this and now what? Sort of this now what? And almost a letdown of like, I thought the new year would bring this and it would be over, and it's not. And so Karen and I talked about that it could be helpful to talk about this publicly.
Yeah, I know I certainly personally had been feeling that, and I'd been hearing it from a lot of folks too. And I think I had said to you, that's where this kind of this imaging came in, because I was telling you, I kept feeling like at the beginning of all this, I really did see it as a sprint. I kept thinking, we shut down our office on March 13th, and I thought, okay, this is like 6 to 8 weeks max, and then we'll be back in the office. And then at some point in the summer, it was like, okay, no, this is actually like a marathon. Like we're going much longer. And I sort of feel now, I keep saying, I feel like, okay, now this is like Ironman level. Like we're still continuing.
Mhm.
And I think those words that we saw pop up really, I think, play a part in this, right? It's the feeling of, much like when you're running a marathon or something that's at long distance, is at some point that sense of being tired, and a lot of it has been some of the fear and anxiety that has stepped in. And so, going back to all this, we sort of recognized that we really needed to take a time to slow down and maybe remind people of some of the things that they can and should be doing. And I think one of the things Rachel and I talked about is the fact that some of the things we're going to mention here are not new things that you haven't heard before. This is really just an opportunity to remind ourselves that as we move into this next year, that these things are still going to be critically important. I also think Rachel and I mentioned we're going to talk about a number of different things that you can and should be doing as we make this race, right? As we try to finish off this race. And it's important not to overwhelm yourself and feel like, oh, I should be doing all of those things, but really like pinpointing the things that resonate with you, or things that you know maybe that really help you and that you're not doing. So really paying attention to some of these things and naming the things that maybe are at the top of your list that you want to be maybe approaching a little bit different. But don't let yourself, we don't want to overwhelm you today with making you feel like, oh no, I'm failing miserably and I need to do all of these things. Because I know for myself, when I do that, I tend to just shut down, and then I'm not doing any of them because I get so overwhelmed, right?
Absolutely, and I think overwhelmed was such a well used word here with everyone. And I want to say that being overwhelmed, can lead to that traumatic feeling, right, of too much too fast. And I think overwhelmed is like the number one feeling that comes with that.
Absolutely. So let's get started. Let's get started with some of the things that I think you really felt like you've been sharing with some of your clients, and some sort of real basic stuff that we know can be very helpful.
Absolutely. We hear a lot about sleep hygiene, and I think increasingly so that phrase has been tossed around. And I loved this piece around treat sleep like it's sacred, because I don't know that we think about it that way, especially when we're home all the time right now or have been, and we might take a nap here and there. And so, kind of reviewing that sleep is sacred and it does wonders for us. And so, having a bedtime is really important. Just kind of having that routine. And then during the day, trying to avoid little naps. A lot of clients say, "Oh, I do this for work, and then I get back in bed and take a little nap." And I think that in and out kind of contributes to your mood, and can contribute to sleep issues. And then try not to work in bed. This is an ongoing pandemic or not, right? It's comfortable to be in bed and have your laptop or whatever. And but the problem with that right now is that it can bring so much stress into the bed that, and this is supposed to be your sacred place and your resting place and not your working stressed place. So, and then get out of bed if you aren't sleeping. The tossing and turning can get old. It's just maybe not helpful. So get up, walk around, maybe get a breath of fresh air, get some water. But you don't have to lay there and sort of torture yourself to toss and turn. Just honor that, the fact that you're not sleeping, and get out of bed.
Yeah. I love that. I'd never really thought about it that way, in terms of really thinking about sleep as something that's sacred. But I think it's really interesting in the work that I get to do and with the amazing volunteers that I get to engage with, and how many of them who are really navigating their mental health so well, how often they name sleep as one of the top things that they really pay attention to. I think we fail to recognize how much sleep impacts our
Mhm.
mental health. And I often find that for myself, I really am the best version of myself when I've had enough sleep.
Yes.
You don't mention it on any of your bullets, but I wonder, one of the things that I have found that has helped me in my sleep is really, there's a lot of great, just real simple supplements that are known to help with sleep. Like, I know I've been trying some melatonin lately, just a real low dose. I just decided to experiment with it, and I've been surprised. I wear a Fitbit every night to bed, and I see that I have much better sleep by just taking a really low dose of that, because I was finding that I was not having the most restful of sleep.
Mhm.
And so I wonder what your thoughts are about that as well.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of sleep aids, um, that we have access to, whether it's over the counter or speaking with your doctor. And I would just say, be aware of that, and I think access them, if you need them, and try not to just become totally dependent on it, right? So do the things that you do have control over to increase your quality of sleep. And then if you do need some type of a sleep aid, I think like you're saying, just that little boost or that little bit of melatonin to kind of get you over the hump. I think that's helpful and positive. And I agree with you, Karen, so much that it is sacred. And I think the loss of it, we don't realize the toll it takes on our mood, on our performance, just our relationships, honestly, every day.
Yeah. And you raise a really important point, which is making sure that you're talking to your doctor first, which I did. I had a check-in with my doctor and talked about that. And so that really helped me in sort of figuring out what was a good thing for me to consider based on the rest of my health. So I think that's really important too to recognize.
Yeah, and I want to add quickly that I think there is a lot of stigma still around mental health medication and sleep medication, and I think that we're in a point in this pandemic where sort of being honest with yourself and saying, you know what, I'm in the middle of a pandemic. Maybe I do need something right now. It's not forever, but just getting that boost that you might need
Yeah.
because of the circumstances we're living in.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, taking a real proactive approach to it. And to your point, I do think there's still a great deal of stigma and shame around medication that's related to any of that. And I do think that there are some, again, you know, supplements that can sometimes help, particularly with sleep. And so, to your point, not waiting on that, but checking in with a doctor to see, hey, is this something that might be helpful if you're not sleeping well?
Absolutely.
Okay, next thing.
Yeah, moving your body. I mean, we hear this over and over, exercise, exercise, exercise. But I think during this time, it's hard to get to a gym, or your regular yoga class or spin class or Pilates or whatever, for obvious reasons, right? The indoors and the masks and not wanting to wear that. And so I think honestly, it's just about moving your body. So whatever that means to you, if that's just taking a walk, taking a break from your laptop or work and just going outside, or stretching, doing some stretches, anything where you feel like you can move. Because I think we kind of get sedentary, and then we're already got all these other things on top of us, like stress or anxiety or feeling isolated. And so it contributes to the negative piece of that if you're just not moving in some way. So just keep it realistic for yourself, but just move your body.
Yeah, and I think recognizing that there is that mind-body connection, and so
Mhm.
that when we're moving our bodies, I thought it was really interesting. We've been doing these sessions in workplace talking about that, about the value of movement, and finding out for myself, because I think like most of us that are of my age, like we grew up in that time where we heard like, hey, your body doesn't, you can't create new brain cells, and now we know that actually the science tells us that that's not true, and that one of the things that helps us create the environment to create new brain cells and to keep an active brain is actually movement, moving your body, because you are literally then a factory for making really great, activity in your brain. And so I think it is really important, though. I know for me, sometimes I got to get out of that loop of thinking that it means that it has to be this dedicated thing, and forgetting that just the power of, I did a session recently with some folks, and they had these great ideas of like people who like do squats while they're brushing their teeth, or who've started like using stand-up desks. So when they are working, they're standing, and just all kinds of really sort of creative ways of getting movement into their day, doing leg lifts while they're sitting at their desk, or, just small things, but really making an effort to move their bodies, and how much better they feel when they're doing that. So
Yes. And
I
I
thought
think
they came up with some really creative ideas on that.
absolutely. And I think that grounding into your body is really important if you're experiencing anxiety. And so since we are experiencing so much of that right now, I think grounding into your body and moving it helps with minimizing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, getting dressed. So, I think we've had a conversation with a client yesterday about how the fashion world is changing and how fashion's changed a little bit through the pandemic, which was really interesting. But I think we're getting comfortable, right, with lounging around. And um, And sometimes that's okay, but sometimes it really contributes to that feeling of I'm not going anywhere. What's the point? No one's going to see me. But we have lost sight of how good it feels to get up and get dressed and go somewhere. And so I think remembering that you can get up and get dressed for yourself just to feel good is huge.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah, and like I said, it doesn't have to be fancy. You don't have to put on your actual work clothes, but put on something that, feels good to you, and feels like something, presentable.
Yeah. It's amazing to me how it changes my mindset, when I do that, putting on, in this case, where so often no one's seen any more than this of me, right? But putting on a nice shirt and some jewelry and, how much better sometimes I can feel. It's great to have those days where you're just pulling your hair back in a ponytail and maybe have some yoga pants on. But the power of just kind of putting something on that's fun. And I have found that even just like you mentioned the fashion piece, I made a point last week of just going and like I bought like a couple of new shirts for the spring, right? Because it's like, okay, I still may not need to worry about the lower half of my body, but I want to put on something cute as the weather is changing and the temperature's changing and moving into spring. So even that put a little bit of a just a little added extra thing in my day, right?
Absolutely. Getting a new shirt can help you feel good and to know that you can wear it, even if you're on Zoom or working from home.
Oh, somebody just mentioned too, shaving for men is important also.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Great
mean, you
point.
just don't realize that how those little things make you feel differently, and so absolutely, whatever those little things are, right? Putting on some lipstick or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about making space work for you.
Yeah, so this kind of goes hand in hand with not working from your bed, but making your workspace work for you. And if you're working from home, create a workspace that's different from your relaxation space, that's different from your sleep space. And I'm not saying this has to be, separate rooms or anything. It's just kind of making a division between where you're working and where you're sleeping can be really helpful, and help you feel that you're going somewhere, right? You're going into your workspace like you would be going into an office, and you have your drink next to your computer or whatever. You kind of have what your desk would sort of be like in an office space, and there's a division there, and so you can focus more, and you don't always have to think about how you're sitting in your living room or you're staring at the TV, right? It changes up the I think the feeling of the context.
Yeah, I know for myself, I had to definitely intentionally create a separate space for my workspace so that I felt like more of a division between my home and work life, and even go back to dressing. Many times what I will do is at the end of my workday, I will go change my clothes so that
Mhm.
again, I feel like my workday has ended. So one of the things, Rachel, I'm curious as we talk about these things is important to recognize again that there are people that actually aren't working from home,
Right.
right? Who are needing to go into the office or who their work has continued to be such that they are actually in that. So I wonder about thinking it, let's keep that in mind as well for folks like that who may not have that and who are working in a different kind of space and in a different kind of reality and how hard that can be too.
Absolutely, and I think like people, that are working outside of their home, it's an awareness of the virus, right? You feel like you're more out and susceptible to it in some way, mask or not, and it's that whole thing about just when you get home, changing your clothes, and just that transition of you're leaving sort of whatever you may have picked up that day, outside of your home or outside of the main spaces you live in. And also I think just washing your hands, washing your face can be something like washing off the day and
Mm.
whatever came with that, whatever anxiety you had or whatever exposure you felt like you had. Also the feelings, if you're a frontline worker, or someone that's being exposed to people passing away or just being ill from the virus, there's very much this need to shed all of that as much as you can, um, to sort of move into your personal life.
Yeah. I sort of am hearing from the last comments about dressing and then also this conversation around work, almost a creating rituals around
Yeah.
this, very intentional rituals to help us separate these things is almost what I'm hearing you suggest?
Mhm.
Because it is like being very intentional about saying, okay, now I'm, switching, I'm doing these things very intentionally to sort of address some of those underlying anxieties, fears, some of those things that we talked about at the beginning.
I think we have to right now. I think that there has to be something that really feels like a definitive separation to your safe, sacred place, and then feeling like, because the world outside of your home or wherever you've been quarantining necessarily doesn't feel as safe as it used to. And so I think we have to feel like there's a definitive place that we do feel safe no matter what. And so separating whatever you do out in the world that day from now you're coming into your safe place and it's sacred and you're okay.
Yeah, I like that.
Mhm.
Um, okay, big one here.
Always. So there has been a huge rise, and I think we talked about this in our last webinar, and I've been talking about it a lot through the year. There's been a huge rise in addiction issues, but also just alcohol and drug abuse and use. And so, we all know that this isn't necessarily a great coping skill, I think, but we use it. It's accessible. It does the job in the moment, probably or maybe, and we sort of deal with the consequences. However, it is contributing to depression. It is contributing to anxiety, and just long term and overall, it's not helpful. And so, while it may feel great in the moment or for a short term solution, it really does not contribute to just sort of your overall mood and well being long term.
Yeah. And I do know, as you mentioned, the studies are showing it. I mean, we're starting to see the numbers already. I think I saw something recently again about if we had this impression that there was more alcohol use, like it's legitimate because we know that alcohol sales were incredibly high this last year. So yes, we were as a country consuming more alcohol. So we know that that's happening. So I wonder if you have any suggestions though around um, I think that those habits are easy to develop, it becomes easy to say, "Oh, I'm gonna have a glass of wine because 'cause I'm
Mhm,
stressed."
mhm,
And then sometimes the glass of wine becomes 2 glasses.
mhm.
So, suggestions on, I mean, we can talk about limit that, but what are things that are maybe helpful in terms of developing some better approaches to that?
Well, I think that, we're saying limit it. So it's like, yeah, one glass is okay. I think just your awareness of how much you are actually drinking and finding something you might want to replace that kind of pleasure, quote unquote, with. So maybe you still do your soda with lime and leave out the vodka. You do that several days a week, or so you can enjoy fun drinks without the alcohol piece
Mhm.
sometimes. I think that's really important to do, and it helps you overall. And I think, instead of saying I'm going to have another glass of wine, it's kind of like, well, what else could I go do? Could I walk the dog? Can I go outside and just sit on my back patio for a little while? Do I want to watch a show? Just what are some other options here besides kind of drinking myself to sleep?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Okay, how about this?
Yes, I love this
Keep
one.
control.
Yes. I think as a society for sure, but we like to, and as humans, we like to have control. We like to think we're in control, and it helps us feel safe. And I get that. And so I think instead of saying and thinking about all the things you don't have control over right now, it's sort of like, okay, let's focus on the things you can. And they are there, alcohol use is one of them, but
Mhm.
also, just how you're handling the situation. What can you go do? What is within your power? Instead of kind of making it black or white, make like look at the gray and say, okay, I can go pick up my groceries, right? Or I can go to this restaurant if I sit outside and wear a mask, or I can see my friend if we sit in the front yard. So it's sort of looking at the things you can do and the control you do have as you navigate the restrictions or the fears.
Mhm. I think I was mentioning to you earlier that we've been doing again some work around stress management, and that one of the things that I often talk about when we're covering this topic is the fact that so often what makes us anxious and fearful and overwhelmed is the fact that we do feel like there are so many things for which we have no control over, and that how powerful and empowering it can be to recognize that there's always one thing we have control over. and that is ourselves and
Mhm.
how we respond to the situations. So whether that's recognizing, oh, maybe I'm eating too much or drinking too much and using that as a coping skill, or whether it's recognizing that sometimes I think, and I know I'm guilty of this, of sometimes a situation comes about and I sort of catastrophize it. So I give it a whole lot of power and weight, and it becomes really big and overwhelming. And that a lot of that is the ability to sort of step back and really take a look at the situation and tell myself, like, okay, what's really happening here? What's the real story? Am I going to let this control me, or am I going to take responsibility and say, hey, this, I've been through a situation like this before. I know how to do this, or just that power of knowing that we do have control over how we respond to things.
Mhm.
And I think that's really can be powerful. And like I said, empowering as well when we own that and recognize that we do have that power.
I totally agree. And two things come to mind. One is, when you're feeling overwhelmed, you can freeze in that feeling, and that just kind of keeps everything overwhelming. And so what I do for myself and what I like to challenge my clients to do is to just look at one piece of this. So don't look at the whole thing. Don't look at the whole picture right now. Just look at one piece and figure out what you can control there or what you can do. And then the second thing, and I talked to Karen about this quote, but I always come back to it, which is, life is 10% of what happens to us and 90% of how we respond.
Mm.
And I think that that is so important in this past year and moving forward, as to we do have control over how we want to respond based on the circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So 10% of what actually is happening and 90% of how we respond.
Yeah, 10% of life, yeah, 10% is what's actually happening in life or what happened to us, but 90% is what we get to do with that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's huge when you look at it that way, right?
totally.
Okay. So this is a big one, especially right now, as sort of, as we were talking about the challenge of sort of being in this middle place of some folks have vaccines, some don't. There's no more mask mandates. So we're seeing a lot of things open up. And so I think this is critically important as well in terms of feeling comfortable about this.
Absolutely. And I think that everyone, not, I shouldn't say everyone, I think a lot of people have kind of tried to figure out how to do this in some ways, whether it's just doing it a little bit or trying to do it a lot. But it's the idea that you can see your people, right? You can see your friends or your family, and reduce the isolation or loneliness by figuring out, how can I see people in a way that I feel safe? What do I need? Do I need a mask? Do I need to be outside? Personally, I sit outside. If I go eat anywhere or if I'm going to socialize, I'm outside. And depending on the context, I do wear a mask. And that's kind of how I figured out how to navigate some of the social piece. So what do you need? What do you need to be able to reduce your isolation and socialize a little bit more, as, vaccines are rolling out and um, things are looking up?
Yeah. And I think people are hungry to be, I think one of the things that we talked about was the fact that early on, we talked about the fact of really talking about this as physical distancing that we were doing because we so need the social interaction. And I think people are really hungry for it and eager to be able to see their families and friends. And so, and to your point, I think I love what you mentioned about really talking about these things beforehand. So making sure that you're on the same page with whoever it is that you're meeting with or whoever you're seeing, so you end up having a good experience instead of getting there and everyone having different thoughts about what's safe and what isn't safe,
Mhm.
which I think is really important because I don't know that you can dictate to someone else how they should feel safe or not safe, right? I think everyone's going to feel a little bit differently about that. And it's a
Absolutely.
pretty wide spectrum in terms of where people are on that.
Mhm.
And I feel like it's really important to say, like, it's okay to be wherever you are in terms of what makes you feel safe.
Absolutely. And, one idea I was thinking of is, I had a client who would go on a walk with a friend, but one person would walk on this side of the street and one person would walk on this side of the street, and they would just talk across the street. but they got exercise in and they got to talk and see a friend at least. So, but yeah, I think that everyone does define what helps them feel safe individually. And as I have started to see a few clients in person, I do require masks, but I wear a mask for sure, and I ask clients to wear a mask, and they want to. I haven't had a client that doesn't, but so that helps me feel safe, right? Going back into face to face. And so it's like, what do you need? What do you need to like sort of start reducing your isolation?
Yeah. So I'm curious on this one. I would love to, as you talk about this, I'd love to see what kinds of things people are planning, because I do know people are doing that.
Mhm.
So if you want to drop into the chat box and you can send it just to us as panelists or share with everyone, I'd love to hear from those of you that are joining us, like as we talk about this, making goals and plans for the future. Anybody planning anything right now that you're looking forward to, or things that you are finding are helpful to you in terms of making plans for the future? So
Mhm.
talk a little bit about this, Rachel, and why this is important.
So one of the things to combat depression and just that feeling of hopelessness is something to look forward to. And so I think because we have been in a place of depression and anxiety, but in addition to that, we've had this taken away from us. This one thing, right, of planning trips or going to get a massage or just anything where we sort of like we have the freedom and all these options. So it's like exciting to think about and plan for, okay, what's going to be one of the things you want to go back to? As silly as it is, I've really missed going to the movies. And so I am excited about that. So I can't wait for a really good movie that I want to see to come out, right? And I can go to the movie. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm excited. So what are some things that you want to do, that you've realized you miss, or it was taken away from you. And so now you're like, oh, I'm going to do this thing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I love that you mentioned movies. Christina mentioned that she's going camping for the first time with their 3-year-old. So in the midst of all this, they haven't been able to do things. Okay, going to Big Ben, pottery classes, mountain biking, Airbnb, which safer than hotels. Um, I know in one of our meetings yesterday, somebody mentioned that they had a trip planned someplace before the pandemic, and they've just scheduled it. So they're doing that trip. You on this slide says massage, and I know I have been missing massages so much. And so I'm looking forward to having one of those plans. Somebody else says that they're hoping to see their mom in May for Mother's Day. Oh, that gave me chills actually, for her birthday, after a year of not seeing family, and excited to see friends and dinner dates again. Same. So my niece has a birthday at the end of the month. So I've had one vaccination and am scheduled to have my second one next week. And so we've just missed a whole year of birthdays, and it's her 13th birthday this year. So I'm looking forward to getting to celebrate her 13th birthday with her. So those little things, right? Somebody else says a group yoga class, swimming, Zumba classes.
Mhm.
So just all of those things that we've not had an opportunity to do, that connection that we talked about.
Mhm.
So I can see the power again of, I have a colleague and friend, Ann Grady, who's also a speaker. And one of the things she always talks about is lighthouses. So she talks about lighthouses are these, when we think about what a lighthouse's purpose is, it's like it is this stationary thing that helps guide you right to the next place. And she talks about the importance of having lighthouses that we set for ourselves, so that it helps us when those difficult times, right? Like, what's something that I'm planning for in the future? Because it becomes this lighthouse, this something that I'm looking forward to.
Mhm.
And so I love that imagery, right? And so having these kinds of things become those lighthouses for us, right? Something that we're looking forward to as we continue to navigate this place of uncertainty, right?
Yeah, because I don't think it's going away, and I think it's important to note that, right, that this virus is still around, and yes, there's hope because we had the vaccine, and it's becoming readily available, but this isn't going to go away totally, and then there are these variants, and so things we don't know kind of what's to come with it, and so I think navigating is a great word for it. It's like sort of navigating as we go.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to mention a couple other things that came through. Somebody else just said, seeing friends who've also been vaccinated and not feeling so scared.
Mhm.
Oh, and that's it, right? Like having that opportunity to do that and not feeling this anxiety the whole time. Somebody else mentioned going to church. that's definitely true for me as well. I've missed my faith community in all this time. So thank you for your responses because that really, you named a lot of things that I think probably a lot of us are nodding our heads and saying, oh, yes, definitely.
Absolutely. Great responses.
Okay. So staying present and open. Tell us about
Yeah.
that.
You know, I think so. Staying present is really important because usually looking at the past can be associated with depression, and looking at the future can be associated with anxiety. And so, if we can just stay present and open to our moment, we can first, I think, enjoy it more, and enjoy the peace, or enjoy the camaraderie, or enjoy the coffee, or enjoy the whatever it is that's your environment. Um, I think if you're in a frontline position, or in a situation where your present is harder, that that you would say, well, I don't want to stay as open and present, but I think trying to find something in your present that gives you something positive is really important, and
Yeah.
just staying open, right, to new experiences, and that life, that there are good things, and there is light at the end of the tunnel, and there are still pockets of light around you, and there will be to come.
Yeah. I love that. So a little bit of really mindfulness,
Mhm.
I heard in there. And then also, I think going back to what you just said just now, I think I keep reminding myself that in spite of how difficult this has been this last year, that there have been these pockets of like the silver linings, like good things that have come out of it. And that has really helped me to be so that place of gratitude and being able to name that, just like what you just said, like what's the light in the midst of what has been sort of a dark year, where have been those little pieces of light
Yeah.
for us? Because I think it's great to be able to name that and to let it help us as we continue to navigate.
Yes, I've had a couple clients say, "I'm gonna be a different person coming out of this pandemic than I went in as." And it's not because they learned French, or, they, like, lost 100 pounds. It's just, I think they were able to be present and sort of look at the positives that they were gaining from this, and what that's doing for them, what that's doing for them mentally or emotionally, or how they want to navigate their life going forward.
Yeah, love
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
Okay, so
I
now we're
love
kind of coming
this.
down to some, you sort of came up with some other like just small things that you really wanted to suggest to folks here.
Yeah, because I think that, like I mentioned, it's like you have some people say, "Oh, I lost 100 pounds and I learned French during the pandemic." And some people are like, "Well, I just tried to survive." And like, not get out of bed today because I feel like the world's ending. So it's like, I think being grounded in just the reality of just doing small things can really boost your mood, and actually help you feel fulfilled and productive. And so, kind of making a list, like, even if your list is, I'm going to do some laundry, I'm going to read a few pages in my book, I'm going to work on this painting or this puzzle, I'm looking forward to making dinner. That is amazing, right? All those things are really productive and fulfilling. And while it's not learning French, or, going to work and working a 40-hour work week, it's really helpful to you, and your own mental health, and physical health, and emotional health, spiritual
Thank
health.
you for saying that, though. I really do appreciate that because I know that I sometimes feel that, right? Because I feel like when the pandemic first started and it was still the sprint piece, it was like, hey, great time to get some like stuff done at home, right? Because I'm working from home. And then finding that it like at some point early on in the pandemic, I painted a room and then that was it. I kind of lost the energy for it. And there are times when I look around and think, oh my gosh, a whole year has gone by and I haven't accomplished anything.
Right.
So I particularly love this being mindful and recognizing that, surviving was a big thing
Oh, yeah.
and plotting out again and recognizing the value of just those little things that we're doing every day. Because yeah, it's real easy to get, especially when I don't think social media is sometimes incredibly helpful with this as you see other people like feeling, I mean, I know I sometimes feel like, oh, other people are getting all of these things accomplished and
Mhm.
like here I am, and I can say I got to work and got a lot done at work and, yeah,
Yeah. I
what a
mean, and
great
you didn't even
day.
leave your house. And yeah, I mean, I think, just depending on your situation, right? Like, as a mother, for me, it was like, okay, how are we gonna even, kind of limit the chaos here, right? With me working and my toddlers running around, and like what does that even mean every day, right? And how do we
Yeah.
survive it amongst,
Yeah.
people who are caretaking someone, or whatever, like I said, your sort of reality looks like.
And sort of piggyback on this was this notion of, again, just kind of creating a schedule. But I also love that you mentioned in here, like, I think these things can be helpful in terms of creating those check boxes of things, but then it's sort of what we talked about at the beginning, that sometimes if we let those things overwhelm, then they're counterproductive if you've let it overwhelm you. So extending sort of some empathy and grace to yourself.
Yes.
Also, when it's like, okay, I made this long list, but I didn't get through all of it,
Yeah.
or some of it didn't happen.
Yeah, and you may not, right? And but guess what? You got your groceries today, or you took a shower today, or you feel less anxious today because you took a walk. Like, that's the kind of stuff we should really give ourselves credit for, and space that. I mean, we have been living under something we've never done before. And it's traumatic, and it's scary, and it's depressing, and it's hard. And so you're not going to be able to learn French maybe in the midst of all those other feelings or the context you're in. And
Right.
so just being, yeah, giving yourself space to, be proud to just do some simple life things, that are just day to day. I think we've got to.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's really important as well to recognize in the midst of all this that, again, extending that grace and empathy to ourselves and naming that, like, this is hard, and and naming the things that, um the small things that we have, done, and not letting ourselves. What is that quote about? Comparison is the thief of joy.
Joy, yes.
Yes, it's one of my favorite quotes, because I think there is that, again, tending to see what other people are doing and feel like I didn't do enough in the midst of this year. But I think it's super important that not only that we do that for ourselves, but do that for the people in our lives as well. I mean, I think about kids, or just people that we love and care for, that we see them also beating themselves up or feeling like they
Mhm.
haven't accomplished enough, or aren't navigating all of this as well as other people are, and how important it is to remind them of these things as well. And really, I think that helps create the space for everybody to just own that and say, yeah, this has been really hard.
Mhm.
That what a wonderful gift that can be when we watch other people also being hard on themselves.
Absolutely. That is such a great point. And a lot of people said how tired they are, and it's like, you think, okay, why am I so tired? I don't do my commute every day, or I'm not, doing the same work schedule, but we're tired because we're anxious and we're depressed, and that makes you tired. Carrying around all that those feelings and that energy is exhausting.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I love this. Is maybe one of my favorite things that you had to share today, was this:
Yeah.
you
So
can do it all, just
yeah,
not all at once. I love
yeah,
that.
yes. And just just being realistic with yourself on your expectations for the day or for the hour. And you can get it all done at some point, but maybe not all in this month or this year even.
Eh, yeah.
So if you
And I
still
would add one more thing to that, and that is and then asking for help, because I
yeah,
think that's the other piece, is that, recognizing that sometimes we should be asking for help, in navigating the things that we're trying to accomplish, that we don't have to do it alone. That so often I think we put that on ourselves, but we don't have to do all these things alone.
yeah, and maybe the pandemic has put you in a position where you've had to ask for help based on whatever your circumstances are, and I think that's amazing, and a brave, beautiful thing, that maybe you wouldn't have done, had you not been in the circumstances you're in. But I think asking for help during this time, more people are doing it. It's just more accepted, and it's understandable.
Yeah. And it also, I think, creates wonderful opportunities to bring us closer together. I mean, I never really thought about it that way, but I know when someone has asked me for help and I've been able to help them, what a great feeling that can be for me. So, in other words, I think so often we feel like we're imposing on people, but sometimes asking someone for help is actually a gift to them.
Yes,
Um,
that's absolutely.
being on that end sometimes can be really wonderful.
Mhm. And I also wanted to throw in, if ways to like spread joy or kindness. If you are going through the Starbucks line, you can do the pay. You can pay for the person's drink behind you, or those deeds of kindness right now. Like if your neighbor has COVID, you could leave chicken soup, or something, meaningful, like a plant, anything, on their front porch. These are the times, right, where anything kind of counts and makes things better because it has been bleak and lonely. And so we can do thoughtful things in the options that we have access to.
Yeah. Ooh, sorry, I went a little too fast there. Okay.
I think a lot of people have lost someone through this time, whether it was to COVID or just other reasons that people pass away, and they haven't been able to grieve that or honor their life like they used to be able to before the pandemic, or it's because of the pandemic that they lost this person. And so, what do we do with that? We're in a new place where we can't deal with death and dying like we could, and so some things that I've talked to clients about are, honoring your person in some way because you didn't get to honor them in the way maybe you would prior to the pandemic. So, what could you do to make them special to you or to feel like you have given that the energy and feelings and space you want to? And maybe it'll give you some closure. But I think sharing stories of that person with someone, writing a poem about them, making their favorite meal, and maybe you do it once a year, or you do it at some holiday, or however you want to honor it. Back to this ritual piece,
Yep.
um, get with someone that also knew them, right, and celebrate their life. That's a joining thing. So you can get creative with this or you can be simple about it, but I think what's important is that you feel like it is your own and it is your way of being in those feelings and being with that person in some form.
Absolutely. So I know we're running a little short on time, so let's get through these next two slides so that way
Okay.
we can make sure to have time for Q&A, and then we're going to do one more of the Mentimeter stuff. So let's get through these next two real quickly.
Yeah, and this one's quick, and I think a lot of us have felt this, but just limiting your news intake, and I think that means news, social media news, anything, right? It's important right now, and I think we all want to know what's going on in the world, and then there's a point where it's like too much. So just be aware of your intake around this.
Yeah, I often tell people, like, for me, because I am one of those people that likes to be reading the news, I've just had to just limit myself and say, okay, I'm giving myself, and even say like what time of day. I'm going to do it in the morning rather than at night because I find like it has more of an impact on me, right? Just realizing that, because otherwise, yeah, we're on a 24/7 news cycle, right? So
Yes. And yeah, getting a therapist, reaching out to NAMI for one of their support groups, just right now, so many people need support. And, so many therapists have become booked all of a sudden, right? So mental health went from this thing that maybe there was some shame around to, I just need this right now, and it's not forever, possibly, right? It's for now. And it can help make this time better,
yeah.
honestly.
And so Rachel, I think people often ask this, like, how do I know? What are the markers for myself or someone else that maybe I do need to reach out and ask for some help?
Great question.
It's
So,
beyond just talking to your partner or a friend, or what's the markers for us?
yeah, I look at two markers. One of them is look around, right? Look at your home. Are the dishes piling up more? Is your house messier than usual? Is it hard to shower every day? Just look around in your environment and see, is this me? Is this what it would normally look like, or is something off here? And then I think the second thing is, I like to say, if it's causing a problem, it is a problem. So if anxiety is causing a problem in your life, in your relationships, or in your health, or in your sleep, then it's probably a problem. You might need some support around that. If this depression is causing a problem for you, you're hopeless, you can't get out of bed, you're just sort of wondering, it's like a doom and gloom thing, then it's probably causing a problem and you need some extra support. So if it's causing a problem in one of the areas of your life, then it probably is an issue and needs some extra, like, tools or support around it.
Okay. I love those because those are just real basic, right? I mean, because I think so often we have a list And it's like sometimes just trusting that and being able, like you said, to look around and then I love that. If it's causing a problem, then it is a problem. So that's
Well, and
great.
I just want to quickly add, anxiety and depression can come and go. And a lot of clients say that they're like, I don't know if I'm depressed. I mean, some days I'm good, but then some days I'm not. And it's like,
Mm.
yeah. And on those days that you're not, wouldn't it be great to have this extra tool or to be able to have an appointment with your therapist or go to a support group to kind of get you through that?
Yeah. And then of course, so much of our messaging as an organization is this whole notion of recognizing that you're not alone. There are resources in the community. Certainly, we're a great resource, and how important that is in the midst of this really difficult time. Like this is such important messaging. So this is an opportunity. If you have any questions, you can drop them in the Q&A or the chat box. And then I also think that Christina is going to take over control, and that way she can pull up the final. We kind of wanted to end today with also just sharing some other words about how we're feeling about this next year. So those were the words from last year. So if you want to go back to menti.com and join us in terms of putting in what are the words that you feel about for this next year, and drop those words in there. We can share those words together. And then if you've got any questions for us, for Rachel, you can drop those into the chat box or into the Q&A, and we're keeping an eye on those. And then here we go. Hopeful. Oh, I'm seeing hope again. That's nice.
I like aware. That's so true. I think this past year has promoted a lot of awareness, and going forward, it's
Mm-hmm.
so
Anticipation. Yeah. I love that. Praying for peace.
grateful. Yeah, I can relate to that.
Okay. I'm not seeing any questions,
Okay.
but you're welcome to keep dropping words in there.
Mhm.
And I just want to remind everyone of a couple of things, and that is that our next session, and I didn't jot it down, but I believe it is April 27th. And that is going to be in the evening, and that's the session that we're doing for college to really look at how do we navigate that? Oh, sorry, Christina just dropped that in there for me. April 14th. Thank you, Christina. So April 14th at 7:30 in the evening. And if you're on our list, you'll be getting updates about that. But that's going to be a really great session. If you know of anyone that is getting ready for college, or the parents are, this is going to be a great session in terms of really kind of how do you prepare for that and making that transition. And then as always, we'll be sending a follow-up email. We would love to get your feedback in that survey. This will be available on our website, so we will share the whole presentation, the recording. So if you found that this was helpful and want to share it with someone, you can send them the link to it. And then as always, Rachel, we're so grateful for you joining us. You always have some great insights. We hope people found this helpful, as again, we're sort of in this awkward space right now of being in this sort of interim place where we're not quite at the finish line, but we can almost see it now, right? I loved hearing the things that people have planned. And I love the fact that now as we look at this word cloud, that the biggest word on there is hopeful.
Yeah.
And certainly I know that's what I'm feeling as well. Incredibly hopeful and grateful for the opportunity to continue to provide this kind of great programming in the midst of this challenging time. And grateful for folks like you that have helped us do that. So
Thanks so much for
thank
having
you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks everyone.
Uh,
Thanks so much for having me, Karen. I've
you
enjoyed
bet.
it. I love connecting with you and working with you and reaching more clients and people.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll see you all guys on April 14th. Make sure and join us then. And we wish you well and have a great weekend. Enjoy this great weather.
Take care. Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.